My name is Thomas. I'm 35 years old and I work as an environmental engineer at a small consultancy in Portland. The smell of fresh coffee filled the kitchen that autumn morning when I felt that gaze on me. Alex, my 37-year-old half-brother, was looking at me in a different way. We had only been living together for 2 months, ever since our parents got married, and I needed a temporary place after my divorce. Circumstances had turned us into practically two strangers sharing the same space until that morning. Subscribe to the channel and leave your like to get access to more stories like this. If you've ever felt that inexplicable tension in the air, that moment when something completely changes, you'll know exactly what happened with us. I grew up on the East Coast, while Alex was always a true American West guy. Our house was out, in the middle of nowhere in a wooded area with views of the mountains. The silence was broken only by the sound of a stream running at the back of the property and the birds that faithfully woke us at 6 in the morning. My routine was simple. I got up early, made my coffee while reading the news on my tablet, drove to the office, and returned at dusk. Alex worked as a trail guide and nature photographer, with a schedule that was much less predictable than mine. We hardly ever ran into each other at home, exchanging only polite words when we did. "You always furrow your brow when you're concentrating," Alex commented one morning, catching me off guard while I was analyzing some data on my laptop. "It's an old habit," I replied without taking my eyes off the screen. "My dad did the same." "My dad? Your stepdad now," he corrected with a discreet smile as he helped himself to some coffee. "Isn't it still weird, though?" All of this, that was our first real conversation. We sat on the porch and, for the first time, shared more than just our parents' last name. I found out that Alex had a background in biology, loved classic literature, and had been hiking since he was 15. I, on the other hand, talked about my recent divorce, my passion for sustainable projects, and my desire for a fresh start in a new place. Days went by and living together started feeling more natural. We began cooking meals together. I was terrible in the kitchen, but Alex had a particular talent for vegetarian dishes. On Thursday nights, we would watch documentaries in the living room, each in our own corner of the sofa, gradually commenting on and discussing what we saw. "This project in Chile is exactly what I've been studying," I commented enthusiastically during a documentary about forest restoration. "You talk like you've already been there." He laughed, and I realized it was the first time I'd seen Alex laugh openly. It was on a Friday that everything changed. It was pouring rain, and we were both stuck at home. Alex tried to teach me how to make risotto, a recipe he had learned on one of his trips to Italy. The kitchen was too small for 2 people, and we kept bumping into each other. "You've got to stir continuously," Alex instructed, standing behind me with his hand gently over mine on the wooden spoon. I felt his breath on my neck, and something strange happened. An electric shock ran down my spine. I tried to ignore it, but when we both turned at the same time and ended up face to face, just inches apart, I realized I wasn't the only one feeling that tension. "Thomas, this is..." he began, quickly backing away. "Sorry. No, I should be the one," I tried to say, but the words wouldn't come out. That night, we both retired early to our rooms. I was tormented by conflicting thoughts. Alex was my half-brother. It was wrong. It was impossible. It was undeniable. What was happening to me? To both of us? The next morning, we avoided looking at each other during breakfast. The silence was heavy, almost palpable. I spent the entire day at work thinking about what had happened. Or rather, what had almost happened. When I got home, I found a note on the fridge. I went out to photograph the sunset. "I'll be back for dinner." I breathed a sigh of relief at the chance to sort out my thoughts. I took a long shower, trying to wash away the confusion in my mind. Of all the complications I imagined after my divorce, developing feelings for my mother's husband's son was certainly not on the list. It Was already night when I decided to make something to eat. I opened the fridge and found ingredients that Alex had bought. He always cared about healthy eating, unlike me, who used to rely on delivery when I lived alone. The sound of the door caught me by surprise. Alex walked in carrying his backpack and camera gear, his hair slightly damp from the night's dew. His eyes met mine for a brief moment before looking down again. "I thought you'd be back later," I commented, trying to sound casual while chopping tomatoes for an impromptu salad. "The light wasn't good," he replied as he set his equipment on the table. "Do you need any help?" I shook my head, but he still came closer. The kitchen never felt as small as it did at that moment. Alex opened a drawer very near me to grab some cutlery, his arm brushing mine lightly. "Tom," he began, using for the first time the nickname known only to my closest friends. "I think we need to talk about yesterday." I dropped the knife, staring at the cutting board as if it were the most interesting thing in the world. The air felt so heavy, it was hard to breathe. "I don't know if there's anything to talk about," I finally replied, my voice lower than I intended. Alex slowly closed the drawer and leaned against the counter, crossing his arms. The yellowish kitchen light highlighted the contours of his face and the lines that years of guiding tourists under the sun had etched there. "We've been living together for 2 months, and He hesitated, running his hand through his hair. A nervous gesture. I didn't plan on feeling this. My heart raced. Feel what exactly? This thing happening between us. This tension. You feel it too, don't you? I looked away, unable to lie while facing those green eyes that suddenly seemed to see right through me. The silence stretched on for several seconds. Our parents got married. I finally argued, as if that ended any possibility. "We're adults, Thomas. We didn't grow up together. We've only known each other for 2 months. His words echoed in the silent kitchen. He was right. We didn't share a childhood, family memories, nothing that usually defines siblings. We were 2 men who, by the strange twist of fate, ended up with parents who married later in life. So then, I insisted, needing to hear exactly what he meant. Alex took a deep breath and stepped toward me, nearly closing the distance between us. I could smell his cologne mixed with the scent of the trees he had photographed earlier. "So, I want to understand what's happening," he said in an almost whispered tone, "because I can't stop thinking about you." Time seemed to freeze. I stood there, motionless, as a storm of emotions rushed over me. Desire, confusion, guilt, fear, all at once. "Alex, I didn't finish the sentence." His hands cupped my face with a surprising gentleness for someone whose fingers were calloused from years of hard work. Our lips met, hesitant at first, as if we were both waiting for the other to pull away. When that didn't happen, the kiss deepened. My back pressed against the kitchen counter as my hands instinctively clutched at his shirt. I felt his body pressed close to mine, solid and warm. There was an urgency in his touch, as if he had held back this desire for a long time. I reciprocated with the same intensity, surprising even myself. When we pulled apart to catch our breath, I saw on his face the same whirlwind I felt, desire mixed with a silent question. Are we really doing this? "Wait," I whispered, feeling my body protest as I placed my hands on his chest to create some distance. "We need to think." "I've already thought too much," Alex replied, his voice husky. "It's just that, since you arrived, something changed. I've never felt this before, for anyone." His words knocked down my last defenses. This time, it was I who initiated the kiss, pulling him by the neck as he lifted me and sat me on the kitchen counter. Plates and cutlery were pushed aside, some crashing to the floor with a clatter. Neither of us cared. His hands journeyed over my body with reverence, sliding under my shirt, feeling every muscle, every curve. I responded by unbuttoning his shirt with trembling fingers revealing his sun-bronzed chest from his time in the mountains. At that moment, we weren't half-brothers or defined by any complicated labels. We were simply two men consumed by an uncontrollable desire. "Are you sure?" he asked, his lips trailing down my neck and sending shivers through my body. "I am," I replied, without any hesitation in my voice. What started in the kitchen continued along the hallway, with urgent kisses and clothes being discarded along the way. When we entered his room, the last light of day was setting on the horizon, bathing the space in orange hues that highlighted every contour of our bodies. In bed, our movements were like a synchronized dance, as if our bodies had known each other for ages. Alex was gentle yet firm, guiding our connection with a confidence that left me breathless. Every touch of his awakened sensations in me I'd never experienced before. Our breathing, which had started off out of sync, soon fell into a rhythm that grew more intense with every moment. His fingers traced maps across my skin while his lips discovered pleasure points I hadn't even known existed. When we finally became one, it felt as if something invisible had shattered inside me. Every barrier, every fear, every doubt. "Thomas." He whispered my name like a prayer, his forehead pressed against mine as we moved together. Our bodies met and separated in an ever-increasing rhythm, each movement more intense than the last. The room filled with sounds of pleasure and whispered words that neither of us would remember in full later. Promises made in the heat of the moment. Confessions released by desire. When we reached the peak together, it felt like time completely stopped for a moment. I clung to him as if my life depended on it, feeling waves of ecstasy surge through every inch of my body. Afterwards, we lay tangled together, the only sound our slowly returning breaths. Moonlight now lit the room, creating dancing shadows over our intertwined bodies. "What are you thinking about?" Alex asked, his fingers drawing lazy circles on my shoulder. I took a moment before answering, not out of hesitation but because I was still processing everything that had happened. How could such an intense experience spring from something so unexpected? "That how complicated it all is," I finally said. And at the same time, so simple. He looked at me, waiting for me to elaborate. "It's complicated because, well, the situation is obvious. Our parents, what people would say, how it would affect the family. But it's simple, because," I paused, searching for the right words. "Being with you feels like the most natural thing in the world." Alex smiled, the kind of rare smile that lit up his entire face. He kissed my forehead and pulled me close, our bodies fitting together perfectly. "I've never felt like this before," he confessed. "I've spent my whole life in the mountains, guiding people, showing off natural beauty, but I've never felt for anyone what I feel when I'm with you." His words ignited a warmth in my chest that had nothing to do with physical desire. It was something deeper and even a bit frightening. "What do we do now?" I asked as reality began to seep into our bubble. Was that just a one-night thing or something more? The question I feared, the same one that had been hammering in my head since I woke up. I closed my eyes for a moment, seeking clarity. "I don't do things halfway," I confessed. "I've never been good with casual flings. When I get involved completely." I saw a smile form on his lips. "Is that a problem?" I asked uncertainly. "No," Alex replied, holding my hand. "It's exactly how I feel too." Those words stirred a strange mix of fear and joy in my chest. "But it won't be easy," I continued. "Our parents, they don't need to know right away," he added. "We can give ourselves time to understand what's happening before involving them." I nodded, recognizing the wisdom in his proposal. It wasn't just about hiding it. It was about protecting this new, fragile feeling until it was strong enough to face the outside world. "I have to go to Seattle next week," Alex said, slightly changing the subject. "It's a photography job at Olympic National Park. It'll be 4 days." I felt a pang in my chest at the thought of being alone in the house after what had happened between us. 4 days seemed like an eternity. "I want you to come with me," he continued, surprising me. "What do you mean?" "I have work, Alex." "Ask for a few days off. Say you need time to clear your head after the divorce." "It wouldn't be a complete lie," he argued, his eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "Think about it. Mountains, conifer forests, and just the two of us, away from everything and everyone." The idea was tempting. Escaping our complicated reality, even if only temporarily. Seeing Alex in his element, doing what he loves, and getting to know that side of him I had only heard about in his stories. "It would be like a test," he added, seeing my hesitation. "To see if what we feel is real or just circumstantial." "Circumstantial?" I repeated, raising an eyebrow. "You know, two lonely people living together, finding comfort in each other." The possibility hadn't really occurred to me, but it made sense. Maybe our feelings were just a product of our peculiar situation. Maybe in a different context, we'd find that there was nothing more than a momentary physical attraction. "All right," I finally decided. "I'll go with you." His face lit up. He leaned in to kiss me, a soft kiss full of promise. I returned it, allowing myself to believe, even if just for a moment, that maybe we could really build something together. The next 4 days passed in a blur of forced normality and stolen moments. By day, we maintained a facade of civility, almost like before. At night, we explored this new territory, discovering each other in ways that went far beyond the physical. We talked for hours, making up for the 2 months we had spent living like polite strangers. I discovered that Alex had a dry sense of humor he rarely showed to outsiders. He learned about my passion for sustainable architecture, a dream I had given up in favor of the safe path in environmental engineering. We shared our fears, our hopes, and our past disappointments. On the morning we left for Seattle, I woke to the sound of Alex packing the car we had decided to drive, turning the trip into part of the adventure. I watched through the window as he meticulously arranged his photography gear, always so careful with his cameras. There was something special about seeing him like that in his routine, without him even knowing I was watching. "You look happy." I turned to find my reflection in the mirror. And it was true. There was a sparkle in my eyes that I hadn't seen in, I couldn't even remember when. The trip to Olympic National Park was more revealing than either of us could have anticipated. Seeing Alex in his natural element, pointing out geological formations, identifying plant species, and finding perfect angles for his photos made me see him in a whole new light. His passion was contagious, and his connection with nature was almost spiritual. We set up camp near Crystal Clear Lake, far from the popular tourist spots. During the day, I joined Alex on his photography expeditions. At night, we cuddled up in our tent, sharing stories as we gazed at the stars through the nylon opening. "I've never shown this place to anyone," he confessed on the 3rd night, as we watched the moon's reflection on the lake. "It's my personal refuge." I felt the weight of those words. He wasn't just sharing a place with me, he was sharing a fundamental part of who he was. "Why did you bring me here?" I asked, genuinely curious. Alex fell silent for a few moments, his eyes fixed on the starry expanse above us. "Because when I met you, I felt like I had found someone who could understand this," he finally replied, gesturing to the nature around us. "Not just appreciate beauty, but understand why it's important to preserve it." That night, our physical, emotional, and intellectual connections seemed to merge into something greater than ourselves. It wasn't just about desire or attraction. It was a mutual, deep, undeniable recognition. On the morning of our return, as we packed up camp, I realized I was at a crossroads in my life. The original plan had always been to stay at Alex's place temporarily until I found my own spot. Now, The idea of living separately seemed unthinkable. "I've been thinking," I began as we loaded the last of the equipment into the car, "about my plans to look for an apartment." Alex stopped what he was doing, his expression suddenly cautious. And I think it doesn't make sense for me to leave, unless you want me to." He dropped his backpack and stepped closer, holding my face in his hands. "I want you to stay," he said firmly. "Not just as someone sharing a space, but as a part of my life." Something unraveled inside me, a final knot of doubt I didn't even know was still there. "Even with all the complications?" I asked, referring to our parents and the inevitable judgments we'd face, "especially with all the complications," he replied, kissing me softly. "What we have is worth every obstacle." On the way back, we talked about how we would handle our situation. We decided not to make any big announcements, but also not to hide who we were from each other if questioned directly. Our parents would eventually notice, and we'd deal with it when the time came. When we finally got home, as we entered the kitchen, the same place where it all began, I felt a strange sense of completeness. It was as if I had gone on a journey and returned transformed, more whole than I had ever been. Alex put his bags down and hugged me from behind, his chin resting on my shoulder as we watched the sunset through the kitchen window. "Welcome home," he murmured in my ear. In that moment, I understood that home was no longer just a place for me. It was this person, this unexpected connection that had transformed my life when I least expected it. If something as deep and true as this can arise from the most unlikely circumstances, I imagine how many other extraordinary possibilities are waiting for all of us, hidden in the most unexpected places. If this story moved you, leave your like and subscribe to the channel. Share your own experience of finding love where you least expected it, because sometimes the most meaningful connections appear when you're not even looking.